How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest New York Metropolitan rumor, news, and post-game breakdown. In tonight's show, we're going to get into the Mets splitting their doubleheader matchup against the Atlanta Braves, securing the season victory as well as series victory, as if I'm not mistaken, the Mets have now taken the season against the Braves, unless they have one more matchup, as I think they have more wins than the Braves, 6-4, so don't quote me. I think they have around 6 wins, though. For whatever reason, with the Mets having such a piss-poor season, one thing that's been certain is that they've been able to handle the Atlanta Braves, a top dog in the NL East, without a problem for one reason or another. So listen, I guess we'll take that as our little consolation prize because there aren't too many positives this season. But among positives, we're going to get into Christian Scott, absolutely stellar, going 6 brilliant innings of work for the New York Mets. Sean Manaea continuing to prove that maybe, just maybe, the Mets could get something in return for him via trade if he is parted with at this year's deadline. We're going to get into the youngsters and Carson Bench, AJ Ewing doing their thing in these respective games, where the Mets fell short offensively in one game, where they stepped up in another, and ultimately the latest on the trade news and rumor front. Everybody, we have big news to get into regarding Francisco Alvarez and his future. We're going to get into the latest reports on Alvarez, as well as what I know personally that I'm here to share publicly for the first time with each and every one of you. We also have to get into not only what's happening with Alvarez, but what's happening with guys like Clay Holmes. A lot is going on with Clay Holmes in his market right now. We have multiple reports to break down on the Clay Holmes front, on the Freddy Peralta front, where the Milwaukee Brewers may stand versus not stand regarding their chances to actually bring back the coveted right-hander. From there, we'll get into a bit more on, of course, the bullpen, Luke Weaver, AJ Minter, and everything else that entails with the Mets set to sell big time by the time we reach Monday, next week's trade deadline. Hit that like and subscribe button on your way, everybody. I greatly appreciate it. Happy to have each and every one of you here. I really do mean a lot. Let's see. This is so stupid. He's just going to read Twitter updates. Breaking news, Jose. What we have done on the platform for 5 calendar years is what we're going to do again now in year 6. Thank you so much for chiming in. Clearly, it is not your first time. I love to see that. We got Alvin, great member of the chat in here. We got Rebecca, great member on the platform. How are you? We got Nick, the Met fanatic. Thank you so much for chiming in. We got a lot of you guys in here going up the list. Malvar, great member. How are you? We got our guy Alex in the chat. Thank you for chiming in. We got Nezzy. Thank you so much for taking the time this evening. I really appreciate it. We got Krista in the chat. We got our guy Dave Kaplitz. And Dave, yes, we got to get that all figured out with the P.O. Box. I know, my friend. Thank you so much for chiming in. Great member in here as always. Let's see here. Condi, how are you? Thank you so much. Mets Prods in the chat. Happy to have you in here. Everyone, come one, come all. Shout out to our amazing sponsors today, as is the case every single day here on the platform. Stevie, how are you? JTB, great member. And that is, of course, going to be our great friends there at PrizePicks, everybody, because PrizePicks has you covered when it comes to the best app in the game for daily projections and labs. Whether you guys want to build an MLB-related play, an NFL-related play once it's NFL season, as we know we're getting oh so close, NBA, NHL, whatever you want in the sports space, again, PrizePicks has you covered. Download the app today, do a multi-pick play, more or less, especially for baseball, maybe more or less on hits, strikeouts, total bases, whatever you guys and gals want there, now that they're live in the state of New York. And if you download the PrizePicks app today, link down below, use our promo code HMA, play $5 and win with that play, you automatically get $150 after the fact. Again, play $5 and win, and you automatically win $150. Shout out PrizePicks, as it's always good to be right. Also, apologies everybody for the jump here. That's how you know it's going to be the show, because I forgot to shut that down, so I apologize. But we not only have to get into PrizePicks, shout out to SeatGeek. Use the promo code WARDY10 for 10% off your next ticket purchase, everybody. Whether you want it for Mets tickets, as they're the official marketplace of the New York Mets, or anything here in the ticketing space, they have you covered. Down the SeatGeek app, link down below, and use our promo code, that being WARDY, WARDY10, for 10% off your next ticket purchase. Now let's get NYM Mets' comment in here. Hall. Thank you so much, my friend. Wardy, is everyone getting traded on Sunday? No, I don't think everyone's getting traded on Sunday, but I think absolutely trades are going to be happening sooner rather than later, right? I mean, we just saw a big trade, a somewhat big trade for the LA Angels, as they just trade Logan O'Hoppe, their catcher, and someone else here in a second for a prospect with the Texas Rangers. So the Rangers are making moves there. We know that the Mets are in perfect position, obviously, to sell and sell big at this year's deadline. And as I broke down with the New York Post's John Heyman, right 48 hours ago on the New York Post Sports YouTube channel and our latest Straight Out Flushing Mets podcast, myself and Dexter Henry, John let it be known that the Mets obviously are positioned to sell a minimum of 6 guys. I was thinking north of 10. He doesn't completely disagree. I think if we're looking over or under, I easily could see the Mets parting ways with 7, 10, maybe even 11 players if they really want to kind of fire sale this more with everyone that's a rental or everyone that has a level of trade value that's not, the untouchables, if you will. That includes the Juan Sotos, the Noah McLeans, the Christian Scotts, and now quickly the Zach Thorntons, it appears, with the great start to the season he's had since being called up by the New York Mets, the AJ Ewings, the Carson Benjes, and to a degree the Francisco Lindors, because while the Mets may trade Lindor, the likelihood is far greater in the offseason than it is at this juncture at the deadline. Can it happen at the deadline? Sure. Do I think it'll happen at the deadline? No. I'll be very surprised. And listen, the Mets have surprised me a lot with their incompetence, so maybe I shouldn't be too shocked by anything that could happen from now until next Monday. Nonetheless, everybody, we got a lot to get into in this one, and I really do not want to waste too much time on the ball games today, because while it's nice to see the Mets win a series against the Atlanta Braves, never going to complain about that whatsoever. We're in the heart and the thick of trade season as the deadline is right around the corner, so I want that to be the emphasis of today's discussion. Again, thank you guys kindly for smashing those buttons on your way. And we got Kevin in the chat. Mikey Ray, how are you? Thank you so much for being here. We got Jimmy in the chat as well. We got Joseph. We got Chris. We got our guy in here, Alberto. How are you? Thank you so much for taking the time, my friend, and everyone else in between. Kevin. All right, guys and gals, let's lock in and let's break it all down. Phillies and Braves both interested in Mets relievers. I mean, that goes without saying. Every team in baseball that's looking to absolutely buy for their bullpen at this deadline is going to have interest in Mets relievers, because the Mets have the best relievers essentially available. The Mets are the best and most perfectly positioned club to sell big when looking at their bullpen. Pretty much every reliever is available, Devin Williams included, but Devin has a contract that's easier said than done to part ways with, so don't expect him to be dealt. But everyone else, though, is absolutely available for the New York Mets. From even the veteran lefty who's probably closer to a DFA candidate than getting something in return for him via trade or maybe cash considerations, and Mr. Perez, who pitched today, who's been pitching much better over his past 4 or 5 outings, AJ Minter, obviously, Brooks Raley, Huascar Brosban, Luke Weaver. Literally everyone and their mother in this bullpen can be had essentially for the right price, and there's no other team that is selling at this year's deadline to that same degree where they have a damn good, a rock solid, if not a star-studded bullpen. I'm not going to say the Mets have a lot of stars, but they have a lot of things going well on the consistency front for their bullpen this year, and that's going to help them big time in selling off and what's going to be a big selling spree. So let's hop into this, everybody. Let's deep dive these ball games. We're going to begin first with the Mets victory, and then we're going to quickly summarize the loss. The loss is pretty much as simple as Chris Sale absolutely dominated. Christian Scott was stellar, but the Mets gave him the Jacob deGrom treatment against a veteran southpaw who they have struggled to hit against throughout his entire career. Chris Sale has dominated the New York Mets every single time I feel like the Mets match up against Sale. This goes well beyond his time in Atlanta, even going back to the rare matchups that the Mets had to face him during his time in Boston, or, I'm trying to think of all the way back to the White Sox. I don't remember too many of those matchups. I can't imagine that they happen often, but nonetheless, Chris Sale was always a guy that's kind of dominated the Mets as he's mowed down so many teams throughout his fantastic career. So it wasn't shocking to see the Mets unable to hit Sale today. But let's first talk on the positive and their victory here against the Braves in Game 1 of this doubleheader matchup. And in Game 1, everybody, we see the ball game. It starts off with the following lineup. We had AJ Ewing in leadoff. Francisco Lindor there. We saw at short. Bichette batting third on the hot corner. Thank you so much, Malvar, for the donation. Wardy, are you attending the 1986 World Series reunion game on the first? Sadly, I am not, my friend. I really wish I was, but I appreciate you asking. I'm contemplating going so I can at least get some feel good out of the Mets season. I think that'll be a great thing to go to regardless of the status of the year. I would highly implore you to do that. While I understand it's hard to buy into wanting to go to Mets games this year, something like the 86 reunion is definitely up there, especially for those who got a chance to experience 86 live when it happened. I think that's going to hit home more for you than any other type of Mets fan, obviously. Highly implore you to go ahead and do that should you have interest for the first. I unfortunately cannot be there, but I don't blame you whatsoever for wanting to go. If I could be there, I absolutely would be there. Nonetheless, we get back in this bench in right field for Game 1. Jared Young at first base, Polanco at DH, Tyrone Taylor in left, Brett Beatty at second base, Marcus Semien came in after the fact, and Alvarez there at catcher. Okay, let's rapid fire this bad boy. We begin the ball game. Shamania works a 1-2-3, including a nice double play ball on one of the best young catchers in baseball, one of the best overall catchers, because the Braves and churning out catching talent, they do it every single year like it's nothing. Drake Baldwin, the stud, would ground into a double play. Bottom of the first inning, we would see AJ Ewing get on thanks to an error from Austin Riley. Sadly, who has had nothing short of a brutal season for the Atlanta Braves. AJ Ewing then would go on to steal his 13th bag of the year. Bo Bichette gets robbed of a nice sliding catch by Mr. Eli White, and Benj grounds out to end the inning. At the top of the second, we see Michael Harris get on with a walk, and then an error will allow, there was an error there because of the pickoff attempt by Manaea, but nothing else happened as Austin Riley was strike out swinging. Bottom of the second, Jared Young gets on with a walk. Mets don't do anything after, however, as Polanco and Tyron Taylor strike out back-to-back, and this was against, at the time, being a Mr. Smith Shaver. As we continue on, at the top of the third, Eli White gets on with a single, as does Joey Bart, but another fantastic inning to get out of that jam unscathed is Sean Manaea, who, yet again, for the second time today, works a double play ball there on Drake Baldwin, this time to end the inning. At the bottom of the third, we see the Mets have themselves AJ Ewing on again, this time with a single and another stolen bag. AJ's up to 14 stolen bases on the year, but the Mets can do nothing as Lindor and Bichette are unable to produce there with a runner in scoring position. Top of the fourth, Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris II. What do they have in common? They go down 1-2-3. In the bottom of the fourth, we see Carson Benj get on with a leadoff knock, and then that's all she wrote, as Benj would be caught trying to steal that we would see at the end of the inning with 2 outs. Top of the fifth, everybody, we see Mr. Austin Riley strike out again. Eli White gets on again with a hit. Joey Bart gets on again, this time with a hit by pitch, but that's all she wrote. Another inning with 2 on where Sean Manaea gets out of it without a problem. Bottom of the fifth, Tyron Taylor works a walk. Then Brett Beatty gets on there with a single that we would see that hit off of Matt Olson. Then Francisco Alvarez, who entering today has not been good with runners in scoring position this season, is this time. He rips one into the gap between center and left, and that would bring in a run. The Mets get their 8th double of the year from Alvarez, and now they're up 1-0 on Atlanta. AJ Ewing says, let's tack on more. He does something that the Mets have not done all that often in the first couple years under Cohen. Thankfully, have done a bit more the past year and a half, 2 years now. But remember when the Mets were just so effing bad when it came to sack flies? Like, they couldn't do it to save their life. Thankfully, that hasn't been a big issue in AJ Ewing. Part of not the problem, but the solution, as he would get on with a sack fly, and by on, I mean driving in a run and make a 2-0 Mets lead against Atlanta. Afterwards, Lindor would get on with a walk, and Benj would strike out swinging to end the inning, but not before the Mets are now up 2-0. Top of the sixth, everybody, Sean Manaea's final inning of work, and he would give up a game-time bomb to Matt Olson after Drake Baldwin finally gets one this time on Manaea. Of course, we saw the first 2 at-bats for Baldwin, double play balls. This time, it's a double, his 7th of the year there. And then Matt Olson, who has been the absolute father of the New York Mets every time we play Olson this year. He's been our daddy, sadly. He continued that. It's 28th home run of the year, one of the best sluggers in the game. That ties it 2-2, sadly. And then we find ourselves in the bottom of the 6th inning where Jared Young gets on with a single, and the Mets are not able to do anything else as Simeon and Tyrone strike out back-to-back. Top of the 5th, Huascar Brosman comes in. Mind you, this is after Sean Manaea worked a fantastic 6th inning, 5-hit, 2-run, 2-walk, 4-strikeout ball. Sean Manaea in his last 9 starts since entering the Mets rotation now has a 3.88 ERA, everybody. Add that with Noel McLean sitting right around a 3.3, Christian Scott at a 2.99, and Zach Thornton at a 2.43 or so. And just like that, the Mets starting hasn't been the problem, nor has their bullpen been, but unfortunately, they have been short of that one true starter in the rotation, and obviously, their offense has been so Jekyll and Hyde throughout the year. Sean Manaea, we're going to talk more on him shortly, everybody, as he is increasing his trade value by the start. Now, the great question is, will the Mets go actually ahead and trade him and need some of that contract, or are they completely reluctant to do so because they think Manaea could be part of the problem, part of the solution as we head into the 2027 season? Let me know your thoughts about that in the live chat, everybody, and the comments down below. Now, as we hop back to this, we continue on. We see Huascar Brosman work a scroll inning in the 7th. Bottom of the 7th, we see AJ Ewing get on with a walk like the stud that is him. Lindor gets on with a walk. And then afterwards, after Bo Bichette does nothing with a liner, Carson Benj, again, we're rocking the Benj Mode t-shirt today, baby. If you know, you know. Carson rips one, his 14th double a year. That drives in a pair, and that gives the New York Mets now a 3-2 lead. Jared Young, everybody. 1 run, I should say, not 2. Jared Young gets on with a hit by pitch. We would see Jorge Polanco caught on strikes. Shocker. Polanco's been dreadful since returning from injury because he's clearly not fully healthy. Beyond that, everybody, we go on to see top of the 8th. Luke Weaver comes in. Dreamweaver. And what do we see? Drake Baldwin get on with a single. And a big double play at Matt Olson to end the inning. Shout out Luke Weaver, you absolute beast. Weave Dog down to 1.88 ERA on the year, and what very well could have been one of, if not his actual last downing as a New York Met. Love you, Weaver. Absolutely do. Bottom of the 8th, we see the Mets go down in order. Marcus Semien robbed of what would have been a nice hit. Mike Yastrzemski, though, does a good job in left. Top of the 9th, Devin Williams comes in, everybody. Shuts the door down. Mets go on to win the first half of the doubleheader today. Final score 3-2. They were out hit by the Atlanta Braves 7-6. And this one, afterwards, we would go on to see not just were they out hit 7-6. Thankfully, though, they would be able to be the better team. Because when we look at expected numbers here, let's look at the expected batting average for both clubs for the Mets in this 3-2 victory. The Atlanta Braves had a 216 expected batting average, and the Mets had a 242. Beyond that, we saw obviously Sean Manaea do his fantastic outing, 89 pitches of work, 2 earned runs, 6 innings. Bullpen was nails for this Mets team, and they got exactly what they needed. Okay, when we look at runners in scoring position for the New York Mets, they were a measly 2 for 12 and left 9 on base. However, still a win is a win for them against the Braves. As that point, they were 46 and 61 or 62 on the season. We're going to get into the rapid fire on the second game in a second, and then we're going to wrap up the show by getting to today's trade news and rumors here, the big updates for the club, especially on Alvarez and Holmes. That's the big one that we really have to get into. Dave, I know, thank you so much for sending this shirt my way, my friend. You're an absolute beauty. You know how much I appreciate you. Great friend on the platform. You're a great member and mod. All right, guys, beyond that, let's now go down and let's talk pitching here, okay? Sean Manaea. Let's talk Sean for a second, because I was really, really happy with what the Mets got from Sean, and this is what you got from him. As follows, everybody. Forcing fastball, he threw 57% of the time today, sitting right around 92 miles per hour and 2,000 on the RPM. Sweeper, 28% of the time, sitting right around 77 and 2,300 in the spin rate. Sinker, 11% of the arsenal, right around 90 and sitting right around 2,000. And changeup, last but not least, 3% of the arsenal, sat 85 miles per hour, was right around 2,000 the RPMs. Guys, Sean and I look good. Sean's going to get an easy 7 out of 10 grade from your guy Wardy today. The Mets collective pitching staff allowing just 2 earned runs in the 9 innings. They are going to get a rock solid 8 out of 10 today. They did not walk anyone besides Manaea. Very happy with what I saw. Brazo, Weaver, Williams, 2 out of those 3 will likely not be here by the time we reach Tuesday of next week. Brazo down to a 2.61 ERA on the season. Weave Dog 1.88. Devin Williams at a 4.29 as he secured the save in this matchup. When we talk hitting for the New York Mets, again, we're going to give the Mets offensive grade in this one as follows. I'm not going to get into all the numbers on all the batters on the season because, again, they had another game after this, but this is what you got from them. Nothing crazy offensively today, so I'm going to give the offensive grade for game 1. We're going to go, we'll go 4 out of 10. Again, they really weren't all that great, but they still got the victory, so I'll give them that. I'm probably being generous by at least 1 point there, but that's what we're going to go with. Now let's get on to our quick rapid fire of the game 2 breakdown. Guys, I'm going to make this short and sweet. The Mets had 2 hits, okay? Chris Sale went 6 innings of 2-hit ball, and then their bullpen absolutely dominated the Mets from Fuentes, from Lee to then Iglesias. The Mets had nothing going. Christian Scott was absolutely dazzling, and in his final inning of work today, Christian Scott did allow a run. However, he also got out of a bases-loaded jam unscathed after the fact. So he limited the damage. Christian Scott was an absolute beast today for the New York Mets, and it's nothing short of a shame that they were not able to get him the victory. This one definitely stings because regardless of where the Mets are at this season, you want a great pitching performance to be recognized and in the win column. I mean, we see Noel McLean currently leads the Mets, I believe, with 7 or 8 wins on the year. Christian Scott should definitely be higher in that category. This was a masterful outing for him. 6 innings, 5 hit, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 7 strikeout ball there for Christian. Minter did his thing. Punchies, 2 of them on his former club. A lot of friends there. Perez did his job. Daniel Duarte, guys. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think Duarte's up to 11.1 innings of work. Now, we have seen 11.1 at least of scoreless ball as a New York Mets reliever. Pretty damn good, guys. I got to be honest. He's been really good. So, we're not even going to talk Mets offense because they only had 2 hits. So, this was the lineup from game 1. So, actually, I'll just add the lineup for game 2. I'll make it easier. And then we'll break down the numbers. And then we got to get into these reports before we get out of here. Because that's the bread and butter of today's discussion, no doubt. The Alvarez stuff is most interesting to me. Because there's some that goes in hand with why John Heyman is advocating so heavily to part ways with him. There's some truth to that. And we're also going to get into Clay Holmes. And as much as I don't want to see Clay go, Clay is such a lock to be gone. He's like the Mets would be silly not to trade him with all the things I'm hearing and what's being reported right now. Now, Mets offense, again, did not have a lot to love at all. Not happy at all with what I saw with the Mets offense in this one. Lindor 0 for sat 226 average, 728 OPS. Bichette 0 for terrible day for Bo, 256 with a 688. Robert 0 for 200 with a 638, not great. Alvarez 0 for 258 with a 781. Taylor 0 for 241 with a 780. Mike Kane, Simeon 0 for 3 strikeouts, 211 with a 620. Benj 1 for 3, 262 with a 717. Carson doesn't give a damn if it's Chris Sale, Randy Johnson, or Sion himself. He's going to go on and get on base, baby. Eric Wagman, who played at first in this one, 1 for 3, 175 with a 592. And Terrence 0 for 3, 220 with a 602. That's the Mets lineup. The Mets are going to get a 0 out of 10 because they scored 0 runs today. It's pretty simple, everybody. Don't got to overthink it. So let's hop back to the main slide here and let's break it down. What is happening with the New York Mets and what is happening with Alvarez? What's happening with Holmes? What's happening with Freddy Peralta? What's happening with everyone and your mother? Okay, let's begin here with something that is abundantly clear. And this is very important to acknowledge. There are a lot of teams after a lot of guys for the New York Mets, but now it looks like that things are even increasing more as to what the market looks like for someone like Clay Holmes. Let's go ahead and let's break it down now. Murray, a fan-sided that many of you guys and gals know. He came out with a piece earlier today. So one thing I've consistently heard the last couple of weeks, the Mets right-hander Clay Holmes is going to have a strong market. And not only is this true, but Robert goes on to reiterate just the amount of teams that scouted Clay Holmes and his fantastic rehab outing and what very well could be the last time he pitches in the Mets organization. Yesterday, Clay Holmes went 4 fantastic innings of work, didn't allow a single run, pitched just under 60 pitches, if I'm not mistaken. He looked very good for the New York Mets, and this was really a showcase for opposing teams more than anything. These were the following teams, everybody, that were involved, okay? We had the Chicago White Sox, the Tampa Bay Rays, the LA Dodgers were in that mix. The Texas Rangers, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Philadelphia Phillies were also in attendance. Beyond that, we have also heard confirmation that the New York Yankees are in Clay Holmes' market and definitely have a level of interest in bringing him back this time, obviously, in a role far greater than just being a closer or a reliever for them. So, needless to say, a lot of teams are satisfied and are very interested, intrigued, if you will, of the Clay Holmes market. Understandably so. Clay is one of these guys who, when you look at his contract status, is going to opt out at the end of the year. He's going to hit the free agent market, so he's really a rental more than anything. But nonetheless, this is definitely something to bear in mind because when we think of what the Mets can get in return for someone like Clay, they have kind of quickly positioned themselves to be potentially the best looking team to sell or buy or anything. The Mets are perfectly primed to be the trade deadline winners as long as they play their cards right, okay? And as we also see from our good friend on the platform, Pat Ragazzo here from earlier today, heard the Mets have had scouts on the Cubs minor league system, specifically in Double-A. You know, and this is notable, obviously, because the Cubs have been a potential landing spot for Clay Holmes as well. They have been linked and have found themselves in the mix, as is the case with many other pitchers that the Mets could find themselves offering to the Cubs. The Cubs have been tied for the Mets for a bit now, but definitely an intriguing thing to see how things are going to transpire for Clay, who, again, looked very good in his rehab, which I'm very happy about. Let's see here. I just want to pull this up for each and every one of you. Let's find Clay's outing. Here's Clay's outing, just to show you guys in case you guys and gals didn't see from this past day. And here we go. 4 innings again for Clay Holmes. 2 hits, no earned runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts on 59 pitches, and 37 strikes. Now, do I want Clay Holmes gone? No, of course I don't. Of course I don't want Clay Holmes gone. But it's increasingly likely now that not only is Clay going to be traded, but after speaking to people in the industry over the past 48 hours, and I don't say this lightly, it is an absolute certainty that Clay is going to be traded. Okay, Clay is now entering territory as one of the hottest commodities already at the trade deadline, especially with how good he looked in his rehab yesterday, because this was the big test, was really, okay, can Clay go out there and be effective for a round of sample that a team would be happy with for, you know, close to a start? And the fact that Clay went 60 pitches at 4 innings, I understand it's AAA, but you have to realize how locked in Clay Holmes is right now. He knows the importance of him obviously pitching to his best caliber. This is a walk year for him, and for opposing teams, they're looking to obviously buy and buy big for their rotation. When you look at all the starters available in this year's market, yes, you wonder what's going to happen with guys like Reed Detmers, Jose Soriano for the LA Angels. Beyond that, there's a lot of uncertainty as to what starters are going to be made available and how productive they can be. Clay Holmes has quickly now entered this category as one of the best options for any team to acquire a starter at the deadline. So I definitely want to know how you guys feel about Clay Holmes, latest on him, or where you think he's going to go. Because the biggest news of all with Clay is that we went from thinking that, oh, hopefully the Mets are going to hold on to Clay. This is a guy that even if they don't extend, hold on to him and then bring him back in the free agent market. While the Mets can bring Clay back in the free agent market, it's not impossible. It definitely feels improbable with them more than likely to trade him. So I don't want to see him go. He's one of the few guys I really don't want to see go out of all the guys that the Mets are planning to trade. But that's the latest, everybody, on Clay. So now let's go on from talking about Clay to talking about what is going on with. And the Alvarez one is the one where I'm most looking forward to and also not looking forward to discussing. There's a part that I'm happy about and a part I'm not happy about. We're going to expand on that here in just 1 second. Francis Romero, who does a very good job with his reporting, came out yesterday and stated that several American League teams have expressed interest in Francisco Alvarez, but the Mets are not expected to move him unless they receive a prospect package in return, according to industry sources. So, emphasis here on the fact that not only are there multiple American League teams in on Alvarez, the catching market is quickly favoring the Mets more than it ever has. The Mets are one of the few teams in baseball that have a really good-looking catching tandem. While Alvarez definitely has had his shortcomings on the defensive end, offensively, he's a top 5 hitting catcher in baseball right now with the way he's been hitting to just under an 800 OPS to this point, has been swinging the bat really, really well over the past north of a month now. Beyond that, Alvarez, only at the age of 24 or so, is someone who not only brings immense value now, but can bring immense value for years to come. Pairing that with Torrens, who's one of the best defensive catchers in the game, such a great game caller, tremendous on throwing out runners, especially at second base, and having that clutch ability to hit with runners in scoring position down the first or third baseline with 2 outs, where, yes, he might be more of a 600 OPS guy, but if you really know Torrens, he gives you just enough of what you need from an offensive standpoint, as long as you have a competent offense around him. So with very little teams having stable catching at this year's deadline, a lot of teams are chomping at the bit. We know Torrens is a catcher in which the White Sox have been engaged in talks with the New York Mets on, as multiple other clubs have been involved as well. Here's what I can tell you on the Alvarez front, which is important news. John Heyman has been beating the drum for the New York Post that he firmly believes that Alvarez is a guy that the Mets should part with. Alvarez is not someone that I want to see part with at all, and I think that would be a very silly move for the Mets to part ways with him when I think that his trade value could still increase over the next year or two because he's under plenty of club control, for one, and two, I think we're far from seeing the best version of Francisco Alvarez as a player yet. I don't think we're at all there yet. Defensively, I think he can definitely get back to being what he was a couple years ago, his rookie year, if not greater, because why wouldn't he? He's so young. Truly, the only thing getting in Alvarez's way is himself with his health. Outside that, we know his hitting talent is there. He's hitting very solid right now for the New York Mets, and he's someone that brings an infectious personality that I think is only beneficial for a club. I've only heard very good things about Alvarez and how he's been, viewed around the team, as well as my interactions with him have always been positive. Not that means anything from a performance standpoint, just, Alvarez has been a very likable guy in the organization. It's been coming down to health with him more than it has been anything else. So, one, the price is met here. The price is made, rather, for Francisco Alvarez. The Mets are, in fact, open to trading him for the right prospect package. So that's where we're at. So the Mets are likely asking for a Cane's ransom here for a prospect package. But what I can tell you is that among the American League teams that are showing interest in Francisco Alvarez, the one team that I know that has been, at minimum, steadily engaged with the New York Mets on Alvy has, in fact, been the Boston Red Sox. I don't believe that's public. There's been speculation on this, obviously, but I can tell you now publicly that that is absolutely something that's been happening. Now, I do not know anything as of the past 24 hours or so, but it was not long ago that I had discussions with people in the industry that relayed that, yes, the Boston Red Sox are a team that has absolutely been in Alvarez's market. The Mets have exchanged players back and forth with the Red Sox, or at least have internally debated those players. And I do not at all know if anything is going to get close on that front. And I will still be pretty surprised if, in fact, that does happen. But that is something that is, in fact, happening. The Boston Red Sox, a team that is in very much need for catching, looking to buy after having the tremendous run of winning 15 consecutive ball games, now right in the heart and right in the thick of this playoff race, and with such a weak American League. Now we see here Francisco Alvarez. And I mean, let's be honest here, too. I don't want to see Alvarez go anywhere, but if Alvarez does get traded, I would be very happy to see him in a Boston Red Sox uniform. Like, if I would still be able to root for him. I think he would be awesome heading off the Green Monster and taking advantage there of how shallow their right field is when he goes oppo, or he goes a bit more dead center, even though obviously that's kind of, no man's land to a degree. I think Alvy would thrive in Boston, no doubt, and I think that fan base would adore him. Again, not someone that I want to see go anywhere. I think he should be part of the future, part of the solution, because I do not think he's nearly enough as part of the problem. And yeah, he's just too young. I just don't think it makes any logical sense. If the Mets traded Alvarez to Boston, I want a Cane's ransom in return. And the Red Sox have a lot of fantastic young talent. They have one of the best farms in baseball. So if you're David Stearns, you have to be picking and prodding for the best pieces imaginable. Otherwise, I don't know. I really don't want to do it then. I really don't. I understand most players have a price, but this is not something I want to see. And Drew, happy to have you in here, my guy. Hope you're doing well. Richard, happy to have you in here too. Peter, all you guys, hit that like and subscribe button on your way, Mets fans. I definitely just want to know how you're feeling and your biggest takeaways as the New York Mets, again, not only split the doubleheader, win the series, but the big news is not only in Clay Holmes is an absolute certainty to be traded, and just a matter of who at this point, but not only is the market looking fantastic, but Francisco Alvarez now, while I don't want to see him traded, the Mets are reluctant to trade Alvarez or Terrence. This is something that's going to be continued to be talked about, and I'm curious if a team does get desperate enough to want to throw something where the Mets are like, okay, you know what, we can't refuse this. Trust me, I have as little faith as you do in David Stearns and his ability to be that guy to make the proper decisions for the Mets at the trade deadline, especially with the future of a young, exciting talent like Alvarez. But having said that, I do know that this is out of my hands and this is out of your hands, so we're just going to have to wait and see. Definitely want to know how everyone's feeling, though, about this in the comments down below, no doubt, on the front of Francisco Alvarez. Are you guys for or against the Mets trading Alvy? Let me hear it. Let me see it. Last but most certainly not least, on the big update front regarding the biggest trade chips that the New York Mets have at the moment, let's get into it, as you guys and gals can see right here. There has yet to be much traction in a potential Brewers-Mets trade involving Freddy Peralta, per John Heyman, the same John that I just interviewed 2 days ago on the New York Post Sports YouTube channel. Furthermore, multiple other teams are more involved at the moment. So mind you, we have heard the reporting, obviously, that Freddy Peralta trade talks have been happening between the Mets and the Milwaukee Brewers. This was first kind of thrown out there by Hector Gomez over the past week and a half, 2 weeks, that the Brewers look like the best, destination, the likeliest suitor, or the most aggressive, rather, to now Jeff Passan reiterating that, yeah, I heard these reports that this is actually happening. These talks are happening. But to hear Heyman say, though, that other teams are more involved at the moment, this is notable, everybody, because there's a couple teams in particular that we have to bear in mind. There are the Tampa Bay Rays, who are in the market, who I think would be a very logical destination. The Mets know that farm well. I think the Mets could get creative with a trade. David Stearns has done multiple trades with the Rays over the past couple of years as president of the organization. Rays have a very good farm still, and Freddie's a guy that I think is a logical fit, because if he doesn't go back to Milwaukee to get himself right, why can't the Tampa Bay Rays, one of the best organizations in baseball on player development and adjusting pitchers who may be having a down year mid-year, get themselves right? Freddie, I think Tampa makes so much logical sense for the New York Mets, and he's only making pennies, mind you, for the last, couple mil of his contract in a rental year, because he started the year at $8 million. Mets have made a good amount of that. Now we're in a position where it's a couple mil left. Tampa, let's make a move happen, okay? Chicago White Sox have been in the market, obviously, for Mets pitching, whether it's Clay Holmes or Freddy Peralta. I think Freddie will be a nice veteran presence for that young rotation and lineup for the White Sox, pushing for playoffs this year, obviously. That is a potential fit, and the White Sox have a fantastic farm to choose from. Then you have in the National League. In the National League, you have one team in particular that I think stands out, and that is the A.J. Preller San Diego Padres. Preller, Padres, they have scouted Peralta and the Mets over the past couple weeks, and honestly, I think Freddie going to San Diego, being a part of that clubhouse, being part of that environment could really bode well, and they're fantastic with their pitching as well. The Padres, they have one of the better pitching departments in baseball. It would not shock me at all if Freddie went there and found himself having success, especially with him only making pennies. Further reason as to why I could see AJ Preller trying to pounce there. Beyond that, when we look at, the National League, I don't see the Mets trading him to a clear rival in the NL East. But obviously, one of the Brewers or the Cubs makes logical sense. Cubs not maybe as likely, according to Jeff Passan, with what he's hearing. And the Brewers, we know that obviously they're not the biggest team in the discussions right now. So if I had to venture to guess, I would say the team most deep in discussions with Freddie is the Rays, the White Sox, or the Padres. That's my assumption right now. But the biggest news on Freddie is the fact that the Brewers are not the top suitor at the moment, it appears, according to John Heyman, that multiple other teams are more involved at the very moment. So very interesting to see how this is all going to play out, from Freddie to obviously Holmes to Alvarez and the bullpen. What you need to know, though, is that the Yankees would love a reunion with Luke Weaver just like they would with Clay Holmes. That's a shocker to absolutely nobody. AJ Minter, Brooks Raley, Huasca Brazaban, these guys are all going to be out here. If Luke Weaver isn't traded, it's because the Mets are not overwhelmed by an offer and they really think he can be part of their future plans. I don't completely hate that, but I think strike while the iron's hot, while you have a massive opportunity to go ahead and really get a return on a guy that will never have a value higher than what it currently is, in my opinion. Drew, Wardy, big question. Do you remember the Nets DR International signing? No, not at all, my friend. I apologize, Drew. Miss Peterson, that makes one of us. I'm glad David Peterson's having success over his past handful of starts with the Chicago Cubs, but I don't miss him in the slightest, and I wish him the absolute best there in Chicago. So, Mets fans, I would like to thank you again all so much for watching. Please make sure to hit that like and subscribe on your way in and on your way out. We're going to have a lot more to deep dive and content manana, so be on the lookout for that. And on the trade deadline, we'll be live all-day coverage, literally, that you guys are going to see on the New York Post Sports YouTube channel and here simulcasted on WardyNYM. First time we're doing trade deadline coverage live in studio from Manhattan. It's going to be absolutely electric, and we'll be interacting with the live chat throughout the entire show. It's going to be a banger. It's going to be a blast. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys all tomorrow. As always, let's